A lot of research has shown that 50% of hypertensive individuals have high insulin in their system. That means they have insulin insensitivity. And then 80% of patients with type 2 diabetes have been shown to also have hypertension. So there is a relationship between insulin insensitivity and hypertension. That is heart problems. And this is so important. Why you should find out if you have insulin insensitivity. In this video, I'm going to be mentioning 6 different ways you can test your insulin sensitivity. 3 of those ways you can do it at home. The other 3, you do it in the laboratory, where your blood sample will have to be collected and investigated in a laboratory. So I'm going to start with the first 3 methods you can test your insulin sensitivity at home. The number 1 way to test for insulin resistance at home without any kind of blood test is your waist to height ratio. Now, for your waist to height measurement, all you have to do is to take a tape and measure your waist at the position of your navel. So when you measure your waist, you divide it by the measurement of your height in centimeters. Now, the reason you use your weight to compare to your height is because insulin resistance causes what is called visceral fat. If you don't know what visceral fat is, it's the ability of fat to be found around your abdominal organs, especially fatty liver. Those are very, very high indications of insulin resistance. So if you do your waist to height measurement and it is less than 0.58, I think, 0.58 for females, then you're virtually okay. Not so okay, depends on how low it is from 0.58. But anything that is above 0.58 could be indicative of insulin resistance for female. For male, if it is more than 0.62, it could also be indicative of insulin resistance. This, of course, you cannot use it to diagnose insulin resistance in isolation. I'm going to mention other tests that you can also do. The second way you can actually measure your insulin resistance is to actually get what I call a weight body kit. Now, I stumbled across this website. It's called getsowell.com. And here you can buy their weight biology kit. I am not working for this website. This is something I discovered online, which I think can work very well for you to use to measure your insulin resistance at home. Now, when you get to their website, this is the weight biology kit. Also tells you what it will actually measure. So if you click here, I think it will now give you a description of everything that is going to be measured. For instance, what is included in this kit, what is being tested. They also tell you related symptoms that has to do with using this kit to actually test for your insulin resistance. For example, you can find easy instructions on how to use it. You find blood sample collection kits, prepaid shipping envelopes, and all that. What indeed is tested? Discover that this kit can help you test your fasting insulin at home, which is so important, your fasting glucose, your HbA1c. If you don't know what HbA1c is, I think I have a video where I actually explained what it is and how that test actually helps you to discover if you are pre-diabetic. So these are all the tests you can do. You can do your triglyceride test, HDL and LDL. Now this is important for the next method I'm going to tell you that you can actually do at home. So if you're able to afford this kit, please buy it and use it to find out if you have insulin resistance. If you scroll down, you can see that it is an at-home lab kit. You normally use the finger prick to get your blood sample. You can get your results in 2 to 5 days. And then it actually tells you how it works. You order it at home. This is the kit. You collect your sample, read the instructions. You can even review your results if you have an account with them. There's a login here. If you have an account with them, you can actually review your results to see if your results is ready and when your results can be ready. So as I said, if you have this kit, then you can also measure your HDL cholesterol and your triglycerides. Now the third way you can also measure to find out if you have insulin resistance is the ratio of your HDL cholesterol to your triglyceride. Now if you had a home kit that I just showed you and you've been able to measure your triglyceride and your HDL cholesterol, you can find the ratio between the two. And if you have a ratio that is less than 1.9, that means you are insulin sensitive. You do not have insulin resistance or insulin insensitivity. If you have a ratio of 2.0 to 3.0, you have relative amount of insulin resistance. But anything that is greater than 3 is significant insulin resistance. The next test is a test you can do in the laboratory, and it's called the Kraft test. The name Kraft comes from the medical doctor that first, carried out this test. So what exactly is a Kraft test? It's a Kraft test. It's like an OGTT test. OGTT stands for Oral Glucose Tolerance Test, which I've spoken about before, and I'll link the video right there for you to understand what that is. But in a Kraft test, what actually happens in the lab is that they give you a glucose load, and within 30 minutes intervals for 5 hours, your blood sample is collected and is tested for insulin and for glucose sugar. And when these two are tested, a graph is drawn according to the values of the insulin and the sugar that they get from these blood samples that they have collected. And Dr. Kraft was able to come out with different patterns to actually let you know whether you have insulin sensitivity or not. Dr. Kraft actually found out that patients that had normal blood glucose levels, which was about half the population in this study, and who therefore were thought to be normal or healthy metabolic state, 50% of them actually had hyperinsulinemia, that is insulin insensitivity, and then 25% were borderline for that condition. These people had an early form of diabetes, which is what I call the pre-diabetes, and they didn't even know it. They all thought that they were normal. So he came up with all these curves. If you look at these different kinds of Kraft 1, Kraft 2, Kraft 3 curves. Now the red one shows you the behavior of the glucose concentrations after the glucose load, and the blue one is the insulin concentrations after a glucose load. If you see this particular third one, this is real insulin insensitivity. This particular one shows you a great spike in insulin and a spike in the sugar, and a long time for the insulin to actually come back to the fasting level. So a Kraft test is actually very important for you to know if you are having insulin insensitivity. The next blood test you can do really is to go to your doctor and request for a fasting blood sugar test and a fasting insulin test. This can also give your doctor an idea of if your sugar level is normal and your fasting insulin is high, then you should be able to interpret the result and carry out further tests to find out if you're actually insulin resistant. The third and the last test you can carry out in the lab to find out if you have insulin resistance is what I call the HOMA-IR. And that HOMA-IR actually stands for Homostatic Model Assessment of Insulin Resistance. This is normally a calculated value, and all you need is the value of your fasting glucose level and your fasting insulin levels. After the calculation to get the HOMA-IR, if you have a score that is less than 1, simply means that you're still sensitive to your insulin. If you have a score between 1.9 to 2.8, it means that you're on the borderline insulin resistance. If you have anything greater than 2.9, that is significant insulin resistance. If you've done any of these tests or all of the tests and you discover that you're insulin resistant, that is nothing for you to panic about, because the good news is insulin resistance can be reversed. In my next video, I'm going to be talking about the different ways you can reverse insulin resistance and the different ways you can also reverse what I called your pre-diabetic state. I've come to the end of this video and I thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll be able to go and do this test. Remember, prevention is always better than cure. See you in my next video.